I would like to call to order the August 5th, 2024 school board meeting at 5 p.m. Ms. Marsan will take the roll.
Mrs. Bell,
Here.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Here.
Mr. Kuschert,
Here.
Mr. Lentz,
Here.
Mrs. McCabe,
Here.
Mr. McNally,
Here.
Mr. Lackner.
Here. Let's stand for the pledge. Thank you. That brings us to item 2 on the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or a responsibly potential danger in the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mr. McNally and Mr. Lentz. Ms. Marsan, please take the roll.
Mrs. Fairgrieve,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner.
Yes. In session, it's 6 p.m. Ms. Marsan, can you please take the roll?
Yes, Mrs. Bell,
Here.
Mrs. Peargrave,
Here.
Mr. Kuschert.
Here.
Mr. Lentz,
Here.
Mrs. McCabe,
Here.
Mr. McNally,
Here.
Mr. Lackner.
Here. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, reports to the board. Item 4A, the superintendent's report. Dr. Gordon, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Lackner. Community, I'm sure you're all aware, next Wednesday, I cannot believe this, August 14th, we are opening school. Remember, this is a Wednesday, so we have early release for our high school and middle school students. But we are excited to get everybody back into our buildings and get the school year started. A lot of work has gone in to starting our school year. I'm always surprised at how many people ask me. So 1, do you guys work during the summer? Yes. 2, so it's pretty quiet. I'm like, no. Our summers are incredibly busy. Just to give you a little bit of a highlight of what some of our teams do. So our technology team, we have a lot of people who work behind the scenes in any school district. But IT is one of those teams that work behind the scenes that nobody sees their work. They receive, unbox, onboard, and distribute over 3,500 student devices, completely reset technology in every classroom, instructional space, and common area after the summer deep clean. Ensure our repurposed Haynes, Fox Ridge, and Lincoln are set and ready to go when our students get back. Moved and reconnected all end user technology for our staff, starting in new places. Work closely with our facilities with Wold and Pepper Construction. Received unboxed, configured, and currently installing approximately 150 new network switches. So my message is we have so many teams behind the scenes, and I'm so thankful for the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis to ensure August 14th goes exceptionally smooth for our staff. Another team is our buildings and grounds and facilities teams. You know, as you know, construction was a huge theme for our summer, and it's ongoing, and things are going exceptionally well there. But in addition to the construction, our facility team oversees 2.1 million square feet of school classrooms, hallways, bathrooms, gyms, offices, and other areas that need to be cleaned over the summer, again, ready for our students and our staff. Hundreds of acres of grass, trees, shrubs, edging, weeding, mowing must be maintained. Our team, our grounds team, does a phenomenal job with our grounds. Again, all these teams work diligently, but go unnoticed. But I want all of them to know we do see you. We are incredibly appreciative of the work that you do. Summer is one of the busiest times in our HR department. We are consistently hiring. The board got a message today that we had an additional one to the personnel report. We continually are bringing new staff in over the summer. We're very thankful for their efforts to attract top talent to D303. Our professional learning department, a key aspect of a thriving school district is having a strong and thoughtful professional learning department that develops courses and supports our staff in their professional growth. This summer, we filled over 415 seats for a variety of different professional learning opportunities. All of these opportunities to ensure that our educators are better equipped to support students each and every day. A few of those courses, core instructional practices, understanding the reading brain, culture of dignity, presumed competency, new elementary educator curriculum intro course, formative assessment that drives instruction, reflective practices, mindset for differentiation. Again, our staff, they're coming in, they're working over the summer, they're getting better. So we're all positioned to be ready to kick off another amazing school year. Just huge gratitude for everybody to getting us ready for August 14th. I'm so excited about the start of this next school year and what's ahead of us because of all the work that we've laid out over these past 2 years and this summer as we get ready to start. The next piece on my list is going to be Audra and her team coming up. We have Dr. Audra Christensen and our two principals from North and East High School who will be giving a really high-level overview of a concern that was brought up at the last business services meeting where they were speaking about some concerns in our bathrooms. So for us, we wanted to make sure that the board, our community, our students know that we take this seriously and have been taking this very seriously for a long period of time. Dr. Christensen?
Good evening. To start, we want to acknowledge that substance use is a reality in our community and in our schools, as well as nationwide. Tonight, Principal Lewis, Principal Richter, and I will share how substance situations with students are handled, as well as actions the administrators have taken to address these challenges in our high schools. I will start by sharing about systemic partnerships and the school discipline in D303. One structure in place to help support safe learning environments for our students is a partnership that we have with the St. Charles Police Department. Each middle school and each high school has a student resource officer or SRO on campus. That partnership allows for the administrators to get education from the SRO, prevention ideas from the SRO, and it also provides supports to our students and families from the SRO outside of the school setting as well. In response to substance situations on our campuses, each school in our district adheres to the D303 student discipline procedures that were approved by the board in each spring and align directly with D303 Board Policy 7190, student behavior. Our student discipline procedures are designed in adherence to Senate Bill 100, which became law in 2015. Senate Bill 100 prohibits the implementation of policies and procedures that require or could lead to requiring non-discretionary consequences after certain offenses or after a certain number of offenses. In other words, there cannot be an if-then automatic structure for student discipline. Instead, each student and situation must be reviewed, evaluated, and investigated independently from other students and other situations. In addition, Senate Bill 100 requires schools to implement interventions into the consequences that they have for student behaviors. These interventions include actions such as sessions with a student personnel service member, such as a social worker, also participation in educational programs related to whatever the offense might have been, and restorative measures. At this time, I'm going to ask Principal Richter and Principal Lewis to share about the school's response and connections with families when we have these situations, as well as structures that they have put in place, both in response and proactively to substance situations in their buildings.
Thank you. I want to put out there, of course, that this is student safety is of utmost importance. I know it to Jim as well, and we talk about this all of the time. Not only just creating classroom environments where students are safe to learn, but also creating a safer environment in the larger school setting. It always troubles us knowing that students are using. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the response, which deals with the individual students. And then Jim's going to talk a little bit more about those impacts that we put in place for the larger student body. When a student is suspected to be under the use or in possession, and again, there's always the range, as Audra said, like we look at those things differently for each student. It also depends on if this is the first time offense or a second time offense or what kind of substance they might have. Those are all very different. But again, they all pose a safety threat to themselves as well as other students. And that's how we look at every situation, is what do we need to do to make sure that this student is safe? And what do we need to do to make sure that the larger school is safe? So if a student is it's sent in the dean's office and they partner, as Audra mentioned, with the resource officer, and we're working with that, there's always a phone call home. That is our biggest leverage move, is partnering at home, providing them the information. And this, of course, is after we've conducted a full investigation to determine the scope and making sure that we're covering all of the avenues with regard to any specific incident, like for other, witnesses, or trying to find out information of like further concerns, whether or not, somebody else may have been in possession. It's actually kind of a long process. And I do applaud our deans at both schools, because they've been really working on their investigation skills and building relationships with students to be able to do that. And I would say that that relationship building probably leads to really good outcomes with regard to students taking ownership. It is amazing to me how many students really do end up taking the ownership or admitting, especially if we have maybe a student who appears to be under the influence but isn't necessarily in possession, which I attribute to the school community, our staff creating safe places for our students. So I do applaud that the interest that they place in building those relationships with students. So once those, as I said, we partner with the parent. There are support programs. As Audra mentioned, there's education program, meeting with social workers, meeting with counselors along the way in order to be able to support the student. The SST team would also monitor that student's progress, because we want to look at how that's impacting them in the schoolroom and identifying supports within the school to be able to do that. Obviously, anything that is found on the student, we would turn over and confiscate, and it's given to the police department. But we also try to connect families with community services, ways that they can reach out and be able to utilize some of those resources outside of the home in order to partnership with the families in order to make sure that that individual student is safe. There obviously are school consequences. We try not to put students outside of the building. The only time we ever do that is in significant safety issues. So we do try to provide some supports perhaps in the school with an in-school type situation where we're able to monitor and provide that student support. Again, it's going to depend on the student and the severity of the incident. Sometimes we need a little bit more time to investigate to make sure, as I said, we're trying to make sure that our students are safe. Sometimes it takes a little longer to try to figure out and get all of those pieces. So that's just kind of the response to the individual students. And then I'll let Jim talk about some of the things that we do proactively for all kids.
Thank you and good evening, and thanks for having us here today. As Shanna had mentioned, there are some very normal proactive procedures that we put in place to really address this problem and try and be able to just have a greater presence in the school. One of which, as we have requested over the past year, is resuming the K-9 searches in the school. So we've had a scheduled K-9 search just about every single month at each high school. And what that entails is our students going on essentially a hold, where they are holding in place in their classroom. And then we partner with our community SRO, St. Charles Police Department, and even sometimes some other police departments from the greater community or county. And we will have the drug sniffing dogs will enter into our hallways, enter into our locker rooms, into our bathrooms, and even searching the parking lot to be able to see if there's anything in cars that we can uncover. And so that partnership has been extremely beneficial to us, because in addition to anything that does get found, it also sends a clear message that these are things that do not belong in our school. And we are going to take every measure we can in order to be able to find those things out, to stop those safety concerns and be able to intervene appropriately. Other things that we have done proactively leading up to our conversation today, but even over the past couple of years, is even things like changing our supervision patterns. As our students, as our parents and our community report things to us, it allows us to have more information and be able to potentially intervene before things happen. And we are able to then be in different zones of the building, monitor different bathrooms, different areas of the building, to be able to provide that presence so that students know that we are out there and we are ensuring that what's happening in our school is safe and conducive to learning within our walls. And so many of those reports do come to us from our students. And as Shannon was saying, our relational capacity that we build with our students is extremely important. At class meetings, during our announcements or 411 days or FYI day schedules, we really espouse this notion of if you see something or if you hear something, you've got to say something. And because we have such a strong relationship with our students and with our school community, oftentimes they're the ones who come to us with this information and really allows us to be very proactive in these situations and be able to stop negative behaviors, whether it be related to substance use or other things that are happening in the schools. And so as we continually create this sense of belonging in school and this ownership that our students and our staff have over the safety and well-being of all of our community members, stepping forward and letting us know when something is happening is really our greatest asset in this process. One other thing that we've done as well is we've sort of sectioned off our building into different zones. And so we've got some different ways to indicate whether a student who's leaving a classroom during a class period to use a washroom, which does need to happen, whether they're coming from that particular zone or a different part of the building. So we may have a certain hallway at St. Charles East High School as the example, where the passes from that area are green. And so if a student is in a particular hallway that we know is the quote unquote green hallway, we know that they are very likely just accessing a bathroom from that area, and our dean's assistants can have a really proactive approach to being able to help support students if something were to be happening. But we also then can look at different patterns of behavior, monitor our students' movements throughout the building by being able to say, hey, if you've got an orange pass in a green zone, it gives us the opportunity to say, hey, is there everything okay? Is there something that you need? Not with this idea that you are doing something wrong, but offer really that positive intent and saying, is there something that you need from this area? Maybe they're going to the locker, maybe they're going to see the nurse or see someone from our student services area. But it just allows us to a little bit more quickly respond to maybe some student needs that may exist. So those are some proactive things that we've done that we feel have yielded some great success that we plan to continue as we venture down this in the future.
And at North, we don't use the color zones, but we do put the classroom number on it. So if you're in the 400s and your pass says you're in the 200s, it's the same kind of purpose. But each year we continue to look at new ways and new things that we can implement to keep students safe. For this upcoming year, due to Dr. Gordon's the council with students, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but and some of the deans participated in, and then meetings with students. They had indicated that if they had a way to anonymously report some of these things, they would be more likely to do that. So for this upcoming year, we kind of rebranded our bullying form so that it actually is branded. So it's not only bullying, but there's also any other anonymous tips that they want to do with regard to student safety. Scott Harvey partnered with us to create QR codes and signs for each individual secondary school that we're going to be placing in bathrooms, primarily so that students can do that a little bit anonymously, and they can just do the QR code and fill out the form right then and there. And it was just, like I said, one of the best things we have is partnering with our students. One other thing that we continue to look at educational materials that we can implement to provide students. There are some things that we're kind of exploring a little bit to see if we can implement this year as well to sort of up the, primarily focusing on the impacts of vape and socializing with regard to that. So those are just some of the new things that we are looking at for this upcoming school year.
Jim, Shanna, of this situation within our schools, what I take away is that continuous partnership, be it with our students, our staff, our community, our resources, but people coming to you and working through those issues is probably our best way to solve these problems. But just huge gratitude for the three of you and the work of your teams, because I recognize your teams are deeply into this work on a day-to-day basis. Board, I'm not sure if there were any questions for the three of them.
I have one. What are either some tools or other things that you guys think would be helpful? Or what are any roadblocks? I know we've got Senate Bill 100 that makes us take a certain approach, right? But is there any either clarity or other things that you would look to help in this ever evolving problem?
I mean, I don't know that it would be any different than we ask of anybody that's a part of our community, like if they're aware of something or they have questions to partner with us so that we can address it. I mean, we're always looking for, different resources and different ideas. I mean, quite honestly, this isn't something they teach you in principal school. But you try to, as I said, you work with those things and you recognize the importance of safety. So I mean, that's really just the biggest piece. I think one area is that there's that home piece and how we can strengthen that to have parents be aware. It is interesting how sometimes there are kids that are coming to school under the influence. It's either something that was done on the home or on the way there. Just having sort of that awareness as well. I don't know, Jim, if you want to answer anything.
I think the only thing I would add to that is if there is ever an instance where someone were to say, hey, we hear this is happening, our child is reporting this to us, really encouraging them to funnel that information back to us, because every single tip, a piece of information that we get, report we get, we follow up on. They're not just things that just come into our inbox and we say, that's not something we need to look into. It is our responsibility to make sure that all of our students and staff and our entire school community is safe. And so we make sure we follow up on everything. So if there is something that someone believes to be true or hears, please encourage them to follow up with us, because we will follow up with it. And oftentimes it leads us into a situation where either we can support a student or a family with something that they need. Or, even if it's not, there might be something else that we find out from that situation. We thought it was this thing, but now it's something else. And our ability to connect with our families, to provide them resources and have those partnerships only strengthens the work that we do. So that would be something that I think that we would continue to really lean into as a process.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for being here. Thank you, Dr. Christensen, as well. It's clearly a topic that you all take very seriously and care very deeply about. I think it's important for the community to hear some of the things that we're doing to combat some of these challenges with young folks. So thank you for that. One quick question regarding it's something you had said about the canine searches, which sounds like a really good idea. Is this completely random what day of the month that would be? Is there a couple times where it's twice in 1 month and maybe once the next month? How does that determination get made?
So we do pre-schedule them because we do have to work with the outside agencies to be able to secure them. I don't know if every single, community police department has a canine, available, but oftentimes what we'll do is we'll schedule that with them. It is on different days of the week. It's not always on Mondays or always on Fridays. We do change up the days of the week. And so one of the interesting elements to that is it is not something like when we have a practice fire drill. Everyone knows we're gonna have a fire drill Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. When the canine searches happen, it is a very small group of people who know. We come onto the PA and we go into our hold, which is great. It gives us the opportunity to practice that, but then allows us to be able to sort of go through our hallways, go through our locker rooms, our parking lots, and just in addition to the potential of finding something, also just send the message that this is not okay. And I think that is, probably as strong, if not stronger than quote unquote finding things, because I think that it says that this is not acceptable for our school environment, our community. It's not who we want to be. And we're taking some steps to protect everyone from it, whether you are someone who engages in that or not.
I agree, very strong deterrent. And I'll just echo Mr. Lentz's point. If there's anything that dawns on you that this board can help you with, certainly I think we'd all be happy to have that discussion and aid you in any way that we can. So thank you.
Just to follow up on the canine search, do we go into classrooms as well? Or no?
At this time, we do not go into classrooms, but we are staying in hallways. We are hitting bathrooms and locker rooms and any places that students would frequent throughout the day. but we are not disrupting instruction because during that time, it is still expected that learning can continue to happen. So even though we have a hold in our hallways, we're not letting students out to go to the bathroom, or unless there's a medical emergency, obviously we would attend to that. But there's still instruction happening in the classroom, and really want to make sure that we are protecting that instructional time as well, because it's really valuable to students. So that's kind of been our approach so far, is to just really more look at those common areas that are not instructionally focused at that time.
Okay, and then my other question related to, are the deans going into bathrooms during passing periods? Are they, I guess I'm trying to get at, how do we address like some of the feedback that we received in the last week that talked about large concentration in particular bathrooms or whatever?
What Jim was talking about the schedule. We have a schedule. It's, sometimes it's the deans if somebody calls on the radio and says, hey, there's something going on in this bathroom. But as far as our daily routine schedule, we have, our dean's assistants are routinely going through and checking the bathrooms every single period, every single passing period. They have stations where they are in the passing periods to be in view of certain areas that we know that kids congregate in. And again, that might be a radio, for other people to assist.
Okay.
Mhm.
And during times when I'm in the hallway, I'm in the bathrooms too. So I joke and say, this is my rotation of these three, then I hit those three again, and then, try to continue and maintain their presence in the hallway. Because students like to see us out and about. Those are other places that we have to monitor as well. But it's not uncommon for myself to pop in the bathrooms multiple times throughout the day.
I will do that too. And I was even in the hallway one time and the girls like going like this. So, I went into the bathroom, like, I got it. So yeah, I mean, if we're out there and we see something, we'll go in there as well.
And does your leadership team follow
Mhm.
your example?
Mhm.
Thank you.
They are equally as committed to this as we are.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing. I'm so excited to hear about the QR codes. I have a couple quick questions. Is that only, did you say it's in other places in the buildings or just in the bathrooms?
For the searches?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the QR
Well,
code for the
yeah.
rebranding of the bullying reporting form?
We're gonna put them everywhere, but we were just gonna highlight places where they could be anonymous, but we'll make them in other spaces as well, because we want people to know that those are there and that it's, something that this is their school and to partner with us. So yes, those will be out and about too.
Would it be possible to also maybe include that with information that goes home to parents? So when you do hear something from a parent, because sometimes the parents' children are saying, I don't want you to say anything or whatever, that's all anonymous, truly anonymous, correct?
Mhm.
So
It
they
truly
could
is,
still
yes,
put it
yes,
through
it
that
is.
QR code and it wouldn't be that okay,
Yes, and we
incredible.
actually already have plans to include that into our weekly parent newsletter. Yes.
awesome. That's so great. Thank
Mhm.
you so much. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Yes.
And then also one quick clarification on the canine searches. When you're alerting it's a secure or a hold in place, the students don't know, you're not saying this is a medical emergency, you're not saying this is a canine, they have no idea. It could be literally anything, correct? They
I-
don't know it's a canine search
I
until they
announce that
see a
it is.
dog or something.
Yeah, well,
but-
I do, because if we have extra police officers in the building, as well as a dog, it is kind of an intense process to watch these dogs go. So I have, that's just kind of what I've done in the past to be in full transparency. This is what we are doing. But that's just a philosophical belief, I guess.
Yeah, and my practice has not been to announce it on the onset, but I always do follow up
Mhm.
with communication about it. But I'm certainly open to whatever best practice would be.
Sure.
Because you're right, we don't want necessarily somebody to be, see this and have a heightened sense of concern. We want to make sure that they know that this is something that we are investing in. So I would, of course, be open to looking at my practice and altering it if that's suggested. But there's always communication that goes home. We, in partnership with Scott and Dr. Christensen, making sure that we have a message that goes home. As soon as that all clear is given, I hit the go button and it goes out via parent link.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Again, thank you to the three of you and to Mr. Lenz, who always asks his standard question, what can the board do? I'll answer it and more directly. If a board member hears about this, I would ask that board member direct that parent or student back to the school. It's the most impactful thing we can do. That's where the change occurs. No offense, it doesn't occur here. It has to occur over here by the building leadership, by our teachers, by our staff doing this incredible work each and every day. These are large buildings, and I'm just incredibly proud of the work that we're doing. And it's an ongoing effort each and every day to make our buildings better, safer, for each and every one of our students. So thank you.
And we do appreciate you asking what
Yes.
you can do to
Yes.
support us. So we do appreciate
Yep.
that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, next up, and I'll go through this quickly. If we can, I'm gonna do a high level for our community of the superintendent goals. Really proud of the goals. And for our community to understand, this is a process that the board and superintendent work through each year to define what are those goals that the superintendent, and when they're called superintendent goals, they're really district-wide goals that we work through as an organization. So tonight, I'm pleased to be able to walk through those goals for our community. I'm going to do this at a very high level. I would absolutely encourage people, if they're interested, to go on the D303 webpage under the superintendent, and there will be a link to the superintendent goals themselves. And that's where you will see much more in depth than what you're going to see here today. This is going to be a pretty fast-paced overview of those goals, but it's an opportunity to see from a high level the work that we're doing as an organization. We will also be reporting out on these goals on a periodic basis. So again, we always start here, our commitment statement, together building pathways to excellence. You will see different components of these goals woven through together building pathways to excellence. You will see the district's 3 values of belonging, perseverance, and achievement embedded within these goals throughout this presentation. Again, you'll see our strategic priorities, the effective collaboration, instructional coherence, and a culture of dignity. Again, woven throughout these goals. This is what the front page of it will look like when you open it. This is what you will see. The rest is not what you will see. Again, this is a high-level overview of the goals. These are the goals themselves: high school experience, a PLC implementation, enhancing leadership capacities of principals and assistant principals, multilingual students whose home language is Spanish, succession planning, financial stewardship, safety, and communication. Very broad. So for the high school experience, you'll see the definition on my left-hand side and on the right. We're going to, again, high level. You'll see much greater detail in the plan itself. Enhancing college and career planning, pathways for student growth, and prepare students for post-secondary pathways. PLC implementation, a systemic implementation of our PLCs. Enhancing leadership capacities of principals and assistant principals. Leadership development, highly effective PLCs, improving student learning. Multilingual students whose home language is Spanish. Establish 2-way dual language program. Academic pathways, and improve student learning outcomes. Succession planning, key positions, future leaders. Assess and develop talent. Monitor and evaluate progress. Financial stewardship, strategic decision-making, learn and implement the academic return on investment, the AROI, facility planning and improvements. Safety, enhance safety trainings, upgrade security infrastructure, and strengthen IT security. Communication, establish and use superintendent committee advisory team, refine multiple channels for communications, and direct community engagement. One of the pieces that you'll see in our goals, and I do say there are goals, they're labeled as superintendent, but they are our goals from the board, the superintendent, and the overall district. We used a process that's probably more commonly seen in business, and it's around objective key results, or OKRs. So our goals are written with an objective, and generally speaking, 2 to 3 key results. Within those key results, you will see very specific date and outcomes for each of those. Again, I would highly recommend, this does not do it justice, to go on to the D303 website, click on Superintendent, scroll down, and you will see a link there for the superintendent goals. This is a start where I want to finish where I started. This is a very collaborative process between the board and superintendent early on, and then it's handed over to the superintendent and his or her team. Our teams work through that, and then we bring it back to the board for their final approval. And this is the work that really drives our organization overall. As I said earlier, you will see dates on there and timelines. We will be bringing back that data back to the board, whatever it's about, from leadership to communication to financial stewardship. There's different outcomes that the board is expecting to see on the timeline that we agreed to. Again, new way of doing it, but one that we are embracing and one that is directly aligned to our strategic plan. That's probably the most important information that I have to share, that it's directly in alignment to our strategic plan to move our organization forward faster for the benefit of our students and our staff and our community. With that, that was a lengthy superintendent report. Oh, we have some questions. Or
A
statement.
comment. I so appreciate how transparent this has become. I agree with you. This was a partnership. And I believe that we've worked really hard as a board and administration to be more team-like. There was a period of time where the community was begging to see where the goals were for the superintendent, and having it placed out there and aligned and taking best practices from not just education, but also from the business world tells me that we are partnering in what's best for kids and organization. So I really appreciate that you spent the time, even if it's at the 60,000 foot level, you just told everybody where they can go and find it. And it won't be a conversation that the board is hiding something. And we were there, and I really appreciate that we are not there anymore. And so thank you. I think they are fantastic. I think it reflects what the strategic plan is about. And I think that we are on our way to that excellence, and I appreciate what you've done. Thanks.
Absolutely.
I wanted to echo Becky's comments that before I was on the board, I was one of those people saying, where are these goals? What can we see that it's quantifiable? Because as a community member, you don't always know the inner workings of all of that. And so this, for someone who's still a community member, this makes it so clear. And 60,000 feet or whatever it was that you said, like, this is where you go to see that. That was never a thing that was done in the past for whatever reason. I don't know, but I really appreciate that. Back to when you're touching on collaboration, I want to make sure that the community understands that this is not Dr. Gordon coming to us saying, I want to do these 3 things. And then the board saying yes or no. It really is a come together of what does the board want to see? What is the direction we want to go within the strategic plan? How does Dr. Gordon see that working? So it's not just Dr. Gordon saying, I want to do, it's a very, very come together, work together, what's best for the district. So thank you for your explanation. And it's very refreshing to have it available like that. So thank you.
Dr. Gordon, thanks for the presentation. Couple things I'd like to call out. One is D303 is a really large entity. You talked about the 2.1 million square foot of space. That just points out some of the complexity. One of the things that I think is important to notice in these goals is that there are goals associated with running that complicated entity very efficiently and effectively. That comes out in both communications and in the financial stewardship goals. At the same time, there are very important goals that are focused on improving student outcomes, like multilingual students or the high school experience. Those goals are really focused on improving student outcomes. And so we have both a focus on running this large entity well, but also using it to improve outcomes for kids. And so I think those are both important to notice within the goals.
Superintendent report is done. I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. That brings us to item 4B on the agenda. L&T and policy did not meet in July, and so that brings us to business services for a committee report. It met on July 29th.
All right. I'll be brief with my committee report. There are a number of items on the consent agenda for tonight. Our financial reports for Mid Valley and D303 that showed no areas of concern. There are there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are several purchase items. I'll call it two in particular. One is our frontline HR software renewal. That's for $34,000, 311, or $311. Renewing that for this year. That is a new purchase that Dr. Gordon and the team implemented last year to help better evaluate our instructors. And then the other one is our district-wide furniture purchase that I'm going to call out. That one is for up to $75,000 for school in our TIPS cooperative pricing piece. The last thing is we did issue our draft budget. That was the culmination of quite a lot of collaboration and work with administration and the board for the levy that is out there. So I would encourage the community to please go and look at it. That's all the update I have today.
Thank you, Mr. Lentz. That brings us to item 5, citizen comments. There are no citizen comments today. And that brings us to item 6, the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 6A through 6R?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lentz and Mr. McNally. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Ms. Marsan, can you take the roll, please?
Sure, Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner.
Yes. The motion passes 7-0. That brings us to item 7 for action, the rejection of athletic training services bid number 2412. I'll just remind the board that a yes vote is to reject the athletic training bid. Can I have a motion to approve the rejection of the athletic training services bid?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McNally and Mr. Kuschert. Ms. Marsan, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 8 for information. There are 4 items included in the packet that are information only. They include A, the D303 financial report, B, the Mid-Valley financial report, C, the Freedom of Information Act requests, and D, district enrollment. That brings us to item 9 on the agenda, new business. Is there any new business that board members want to bring up?
So in order for us to be maybe a little more efficient, would it be possible for the board to have a discussion about committee reports? The only reason I'm thinking about it is that portion of the agenda can sometimes be rather long. And I think at every committee, almost everybody from the board is there. It used to be that board members didn't go to every committee meeting, nor were they recorded. So you couldn't catch up. And the only place you could hear about it was at the board table. And so we have multiple ways of getting the information out to community. And so if it would be appropriate to just have a conversation about that at some time in the future.
I think it's a good idea. One thing I will say that that I've heard from the community is that there is an appreciation for us when we do bring it to and do a readout. So if we have some sort of format or other things that we can talk through and perhaps look at some of the other districts and what they're doing. But it has been something that I've heard feedback is very valuable because we know this, like we see the room on committee meetings as well, right? And a lot of people pay attention specifically to board meetings. So,
Well, one thing I would suggest, since we have, Mr. McNally, you have a.
I just, this has come up in the past and we've talked about the, kind of the way those things are presented. I think certainly they can be abbreviated. Sometimes they're a little Tolstoy-esque in their reading. But I think people are looking for those committee chairs to kind of tell them what the highlights are. And then they know what to go back and look for. So I think we do, it certainly bears discussion. But I think we do need to bear in mind that the public does generally pay closer attention to the regular board meeting than they do to committee meetings because, well, frankly, who likes meetings?
Well, let me offer the following. It's certainly, we're certainly able to add this to an agenda for a discussion and bring, pros and cons and maybe some comparative analysis of how some of the other districts manage their committee meetings. And I think Mrs. McCabe makes a good point. Ours are all live streamed and available recorded for people to participate in, but let's have a further discussion about it in an upcoming regular board meeting.
I would just like to add that I think that's a great idea, Mrs. McCabe. The feedback I've heard is that the meeting minutes are available for people to read. So when we read the minutes, people sometimes get a little lost in the verbiage if they're not quite, if they've read it once and now they're hearing the meeting and that some of it think becomes unclear. But definitely high level conversations are very important to update. But to your point, people do really appreciate the updates at the board table so they can hear it in the grand scheme. So I'm glad we're discussing it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding new business?
I just have my typical, at this time of year, how are we as far as those numbers where we're on the cusp of perhaps having to cap? And are we, I guess I have another additional question regarding that is, if something happens between now and the beginning of the school year, which is a week away, are we prepared or are we going to be able to hire someone if we get one of those, all of a sudden some number goes up or we're right on the cusp and we get there?
Yeah, we're continually hiring as I look over at our chief human resource officer on a day-to-day basis. We continue to monitor our enrollment at each of our schools overall. But to, I think, your point, we also look inside the schools to the classroom level to see where are they at. Are they getting close to moving to another section at the elementary level specifically? So it's been a busy summer of move-ins in D303. It really has been. I mean, there is one school that had 12 new students on one day. So it is occurring throughout this, but we're feeling very confident right now where we're at with our current sections. But Jared monitors almost daily at the elementary level, and Audra monitors at the secondary. And then I'm brought in when we're talking about a potential FTE. I haven't been brought into that for a little bit, so that's good news that we're doing well there. So anything that I missed, okay, they're saying no. All right, so I feel like we're in a good spot, but every day, literally things do change.
And then just one other question unrelated to that, but kind of related, and that is, as far as the dual language, have we had any, we talked about the potential for opt-ins. Have we had any interest, or where is the interest on that right now?
I'll have to get back on that one to you. I have not sat with Dr. Igo on that specific topic yet.
I don't know if this is the right part of the agenda, but this will be the last time we meet as a board before school starts. So wishing a great beginning. It's one of the best days of the whole school year.
It is.
And having two grandkids who are going in to new schools, I can tell you the excitement and also the clothes buying and the shoe purchasing is happening. And having been an educator for a long time, the anxiety and the excitement are at high levels. And I know most of us have had that experience with our own kids, but this is a great district. This is a great administration, great teachers, great leaders at the building and across the district. And thank you for all your help, and go St. Charles.
Go
And I hope it all
T303.
works well.
Mrs. McKay, but you bring up a really good point, and I'll highlight one of the district's values around belonging. Our district does an amazing job of opening up our buildings to alleviate some of those fears, because we recognize those fears at the preschool, middle, elementary, high school, our transition program. We're hosting kindergarten roundups. We're opening our elementaries. Our middle schools have had different events. Our high schools had some last week and this week. Every level of our organization are welcoming our students and our families into our buildings because of that exact reason. To be able to, especially for those students who are transitioning from 5th to 6th, from 8th to 9th, those are big changes in young people, and they need to see that. Our preschool, having an open house at our preschool for our 3 and 4-year-olds, to be able to have all those opportunities. And for us, what I'm so proud of, and thank you for highlighting our opening, I am so proud of our school leaders who have put so much time and effort into making sure this is one of those. They recognize how important that first day is, and the critical nature of doing all that planning and prep work for that moment when they open up those doors. Because young people come to us with many different things that they're thinking about this school year, and our staff will be absolutely ready to embrace our students on that first day.
One thing that I love that we have been able to do as board members is participate in the first day of school to welcome students in. And that's just such a cool thing. It's like, it's similar in the sense of graduation where you have like all these other kiddos. It's such a huge moment of pride. Everyone's got these great new outfits on with their shiny shoes and smiles on their faces. And I think our staff, your staff, does an amazing job of welcoming everybody. So thank you for that. And thank you for including us.
Any other comments around new business? Seeing none, that moves us to item 10. For action, election of board vice president. The board currently has a vacancy in the role of board vice president. At this time, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for the role of board vice president.
I'd like to nominate Thomas Lentz.
I would like to nominate Mrs. Becky McCabe for the board vice president. I also, Mr. President, have a few comments that I would like to give for consideration.
Please.
So in the state of Illinois, the school board is a nonpartisan governing body. The school board is intended to consider the perspective of all community members, and board officers hopefully does the same. Mrs. McCabe and I certainly do not share the same perspective a lot of the time, nor do we vote the same. The value, in my view, and hopefully others as well, that she brings is diversity in thought and in leadership. Varied perspectives were the attributes, I think, of a functioning and a balanced board. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the role of vice president? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? The nomination for board vice president is now closed. The nominees are Mr. Lentz and Mrs. McCabe. Ms. Marsan, will you take a roll call vote for the office of vice president? When Mrs. Marsan calls your name, please state your choice for board vice president.
Mr. Kuschert,
Thomas Lentz.
Mr. Lentz,
Thomas Lentz.
Mrs. McCabe,
Becky McCabe.
Mr. McNally,
Thomas Lentz.
Mrs. Bell,
Becky McCabe, I would like to just make a quick statement with regards to the nominations tonight. I was totally unaware that you were running, and I would expect for anyone wanting a position in leadership to have best practice in mind, which would be 1 year of service on the board for an office or position, as well as a good communication with each board member. And I just want to let you know publicly so everyone understands why I'm voting the way I'm voting. I do also completely agree with the balanced board idea. It is essential And I think a wide range of views and leadership is really important for our organization. So it is nothing personal. I just want you to understand that. And I didn't even have a chance to tell you ahead of time because I didn't know. So in the future, if someone's running for an officer position, you should probably, I would hope that everyone would reach out if they're going to run, because not knowing that gives me no opportunity to have a conversation with you about it. So
Isabel, what's your vote?
oh, I voted for Becky McCabe.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Fairgrave,
Becky McCabe.
Mr. Lackner.
Thomas Lentz. Congratulations to Mr. Lentz. That brings us to item 11 on the agenda, citizen comments. We have no end of meeting citizens comments, so that brings us to item 12. Can I have a motion to adjourn the August 5th, 2024 school board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kuschert and Mr. Lentz. Ms. Marsan, please take the roll.
Mr. Lentz,
Yes.
Mrs. McCabe,
Yes.
Mr. McNally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bell,
Yes.
Mrs. Fairgrave,
Yes.
Mr. Kuschert,
Yes.
Mr. Lackner.
Yes, the meeting is adjourned at 6:55. Thank you.